Well, welcome. Welcome to Peer Support Done Intentionally. My name is David Blacksmith. I am the Program Director for On the Road to Recovery here in Manchester, and we also have a site in Derry as well, On the Road to Recovery there in Derry. And we're here to share with you what peer support is when it's done intentionally. We've already done one program. This is our second segment of that, and we're not very polished on this, so we said the last program as well. Give us a little grace if we kind of stumble over ourselves. But I'd like to introduce those that are with me here. To my right is Warren Bouchard, who is the executive director for On the Road to Recovery. He's been with On the Road to Recovery like, I don't know, forever. And I've only been there half of forever. And then to his right is Paula Baker. She's our team leader down in Derry, and very well adept at these things called intentional peer support, and highly trained in many things. So, just casually speaking here today, on our first segment of the program, we had covered what is on the who is on the road to recovery, what do we do, shared a little bit of the history, and that one, and we're not going to repeat too much of that for the most part. But what our program is about is On the Road to Recovery provides a service. We're part of the mental health system here in New Hampshire, and we provide a free service to adults 18 and over who are managing their mental wellness, whatever that might mean, and both of our sites do that. And in doing so, we do so using a particular method or a school of thought known as intentional peer support. Now, there's peer support of many different kinds all around the country, all around the world, and not all peer support is the same. And we follow that model called intentional peer support. So, and you can even go online and Google that, and there's plenty of things on YouTube, as well as the intentional peer support website rooted in Vermont, who are the authors of this whole model that we subscribe to. But we thought having this program would be very educational and inspirational, give some insight to those that may be curious as to what is that place on 13 Orange Street? What do they do anyway? So, again, we represent On the Road to Recovery. And so, let me quit tripping over myself already here. And in the first segment, again, I said we discussed some of our history, and from pretty much start till about now. And since our last program, and now we've some things have changed. Not changed, but we've added something to our program that we think is very exciting. And I am going to share that. Let Warren share with that. We're in a collaborative relationship with the Mental Health Center of Greater Manchester. But I'll let Warren speak to that and what that means to our viewers and to our peers. And so let me get out of your way.
Okay. Well, we entered some dialogue with the Mental Health Center of Greater Manchester, and specifically with Bill Ryder, the CEO of Mental Health Center of Greater Manchester, and members of his team. And we discussed those kinds of things that we share, and how we could be of mutual benefit to each other in meeting the needs of folks here in the Greater Manchester area. So we have reached out and established this collaboration, and the extent of the collaboration is that we are sending a peer specialist to participate in the ACT team, Assertive Community Treatment Team of the Mental Health Center. The ACT team at the center, at the Mental Health Center, has been in existence for a number of years. However, recently, through some outcomes of some litigation that had transpired, all of the mental health centers in New Hampshire and the various regions of the state have been encouraged to and have reached out to the peer support agencies in those regions. Peer support agencies uses a non-medical model, as David had mentioned, and we have peer support specialists on board at On the Road to Recovery, and rather than duplicate efforts, there are a couple of models that ACT teams in the state are using, but the model that is being used in Greater Manchester is that the peer support agency in Manchester, which is On the Road to Recovery, is providing a peer specialist for the Manchester Health Center, the Mental Health Center of Greater Manchester. I've got to get my arms around that terminology. It kind of trips me up a little bit. So the PSA, the Peer Support Agency in Manchester, is now in collaboration. We have a member of our team going to, who has attended orientations with the staff of the ACT team and is actually meeting with that staff and actively contributing a mindset and a viewpoint that we use at On the Road to Recovery, using the principles and the values of peer support. We're very excited about it. I want to publicly thank Bill Ryder and his team for their collaboration, and we're looking forward to a lot of success with that. The more that groups that work in the arena of mental health, such as On the Road, that's a mental health education and wellness center. Folks can come to our center. There's no charge. It's a organization that accepts self-identification that a person is struggling with their mental health. The same goes for the Dury Center. Folks come in and they declare that they're having some issues. We try to present them with a variety of options, focusing on their developing a plan for their wellness. It's member driven, and the individual has so much to say in developing his plan.
Gotcha.
I don't know much else I can.
No, we're good.
Okay.
That's good. So it is a privilege to be able to provide intentional peer support now, not just at the center, but also now out in the community. The ACT teams reach out to individuals who are assigned to them throughout the community, and it's in their homes, in their place of business, at a coffee shop, whatever, that type of thing, as well as on site. And so we're excited to see how that will expand and grow and impact and make a difference, because it is a non-clinical model. And so you have all of the clinician part, and then you have the intentional peer support part, and working together holistically to meet the mental health and overall health of an individual. So that's what we're doing. And so here we are talking about all this intentional peer support. We talked about what that kind of looked like in our first segment, but today we want to spend the rest of our program here to get into the nuts and bolts. There are quite frankly, maybe I should say that there are a lot of nuts and bolts, because intentional peer support is rooted in relationships, and we all know that relationships have lots of nuts and bolts. Some things are tight, some things are loose, that type of thing, whatever. Some things fit, some things don't. And so one of the things there, we talk in our sphere of influence, we talk about tasks, we talk about values. There's 10 of those tasks, there's 4 that we focus on, and there's 3 underlying principles. And today we really want to at least begin. Well, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to cover it all or not. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But we want to talk about those 3 principles, because I think they're really foundational. The values, we're going to get into those as well in subsequent segments of this program, and those are important, because we look for those kind of drive us throughout the day and throughout the week as we're moving towards. And now that I just said that, let me just stop for just a moment and say that the whole essence of what we're doing with intentional peer support is moving towards something. Most people who access our peer support that are managing maybe even struggling, or for the first time, just not sure where they are in their mental wellness, are looking for tools and looking for ways to maintain, to get better, to stay stable, and those type of things, and to be part of a community without any fear of judgment. And what we do is we have this mindset of moving towards something rather than moving away. Moving away is always looking at the thing that you don't want. Moving toward is moving toward the thing that you do want. And I focus on that because I think that somewhere in this program that's going to come back out again. So that being said, in the whole moving towards something, there are three basic principles in which intentional peer support operates from, foundational truths that we function from. And I'm going to go back and forth with Paula with this for a few minutes. And I'm just going to rattle them off really quick, and then we'll discuss them just a little bit. Those three principles are learning versus helping. That's learning versus helping. There's relationship versus individual. And then there's hope-based conversation versus fear-based conversation. Those three things are very important to us, and those would undergird all of what we do in terms of our programming, our groups, our one-on-ones, our everything. So let's take a minute, Paula, if you don't mind. Let's banter back and forth a little bit. What does it mean? What is this learning versus helping deal? What is this about?
Okay, well,
It's not a quiz.
the way I look at learning versus helping is that we're growing together, we're evolving together. We're not neither of us are the expert. We're both the experts,
Mm-hmm.
And I guess one of the differences is that we take the differences that we have with each other, and we we look at the differences and reconsider and maybe sit with some discomfort in that, rather than trying to fix it or help it or change it.
Yeah, let me illuminate that just a little
Okay.
bit, okay? And let me illuminate it by focusing on that helping part, because what you're talking about is that learning part. The helping part is what we don't do, and it's hard not to do that, by the way. All right, it's hard not to help because our instinct, everything about of how we operate, at least in our culture. I don't know other cultures, but we operate on helping people, such as. When I go to the doctor and I'm having an earache and it feels like a sinus infection, I'm going to get some help, or if something's going on with me, whether it's mentally, whether it's physically, whatever it might be, I go to somebody who is as Paula mentioned, the expert type of thing, someone who knows these things and can diagnose and then can help me out and find a solution for those things. So they're always helping. They're the authority. I'm not. I'm the one that's coming for help. That's traditionally what we do. Well, in intentional peer support, we don't go there. As Warren clearly mentioned, we're a non-clinical model. We don't do the helping. It's based on learning, and it's quite frankly, in a relationship, it's Paula and I. Let's say it's the two of us interacting together and sharing, what's going on. I'm having a tough day, or I'm feeling very uncomfortable in my own skin today, type of thing. Her response to me would not be to help me, but would be to share her own experiences as well. Ask some questions of, what do we call them? Curiosity, questions of wonder. Wonder what's going on. Where does that worldview come from? How do you, what makes you think that? What makes you feel, that you're uncomfortable in your own skin? And so both of us are learning together. So I know when I go to my doctor, I go to my physician, right? We're not in a collaborative relationship. They're not telling me how they feel, right? That type of thing. They're just telling me what I need to know and send me to the pharmacy, and I should be better in 10 days. That type of thing. So that's essentially what we do. I mean, it's counterintuitive in many ways. That I say it all the time, and probably somebody will shoot me for saying this. We don't help anybody, but we do. Okay, but what we do is we help each other in the relationship because we're learning with each other. Right? Anything you want to say about that, Warren, before I go to the next one?
Yeah, I think by its very nature, we're from infancy, we're taught to share, and we're taught to help each other. So help is a four-letter word that we learn very early in life. One of the hardest things I had to do in learning about intentional peer support was to take the word help out of my vocabulary and come to the table with the idea that I was going to learn. And I was going to learn about talking about those buttons that get pushed in my life that create issues for me. And in sharing, I would be able to find some resolution that I could apply to my own life. So it becomes a collaboration, a sharing collaboration, having a lived experience. It's another term that we use, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later on in other programs. But the learning is really the key. Knowledge is a powerful, powerful tool if you have the knowledge. So to me, it's a key to wellness.
And that knowledge, I think that Warren is referring to, correct me if I'm wrong, but that knowledge is about self. It's really about being self-aware.
Yes.
You know, it's being aware of
Absolutely.
myself, being aware of what makes me strong, what makes me weak, what makes me tick, what makes me knowing myself when I'm well, when I'm not, all that kind of stuff. Being self-aware, and that's what we do. That's what intentional peer support is about, is developing that relationship to get to that place.
And part of that process of learning is building a toolbox, and I'm sure we'll talk about that
Yeah.
later too.
Yeah, exactly. So the other one I mentioned, the other foundational truth that we operate from, the principle, first is learning versus help, and the other is relationship versus individual. Think we can unpack that just a little bit? What do you think?
Sure. This is like my favorite principle, actually.
Okay.
It was maybe one of the the learning versus helping was my hardest to change my thinking about, but this is the one I get most excited about, especially at our center, because they're not used to having somebody focusing on a relationship. You know, they haven't always had, like, not all of us have had that opportunity to have somebody be focusing on a relationship with us. And so when they come in and we're focusing on that, and we're both people are contributing in it, and that's what makes it the relationship, is that both people are contributing. It's not just one person, or one has to change and the other doesn't, or we're both concentrating on each other and the relationship, and both evolving together, and we understanding each other's perspectives. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that what you just said, because of what you're in that dynamic of a relationship with it's not about me being the expert and you know, type of thing, or it's not just about you, type of thing. It's about us, and we're evolving, as you said, together in that relationship, and that leads it actually I think these two, relationship and individual, that relationship is rooted in conversation. You know, it's not just sitting there,
Right.
you know, but it's rooted in a conversation. It's sharing our untold stories, or asking those questions of wonder about those untold stories. And that is the third of our principles, which is hope-based conversation versus fear-based conversations. That was quite frankly, I understand it intellectually, but I had a hard time wrapping my head around, you know, verbalizing, what does that mean? What does that actually look like? You know, what does a fear-based conversation sound like versus a hope-based one? And I borrowed a couple things from our training manual today, just to, you know, to kind of help my thinking with this in this conversation. But if a conversation is kind of going like, you know, I don't know what to do, to use that same thing, I feel what I said earlier. I feel very uncomfortable in my own skin today. You know, a fear-based conversation might sound something, you know, like let's say that Warren had just told me that he was feeling very uncomfortable in his skin. You know, my fear-based conversation to him would be more like, well, have you told your doctor about that? That type of thing. What are you going to do to, to feel safe about that? Those type of things. Those are rooted in fear, or my own fear, quite frankly, type of thing. And they're not hope-based, but a hope-based response to that same conversation. Should I do the quiz thing here and ask Paula, what do you think would be a hope-based response to that same thing? If I'm like, I'm really uncomfortable in my own skin today, I don't feel safe.
I would probably just say to you, I wonder if you could tell me, like, what does that feel like? What are, what is making you, what has happened
Yeah,
that is making you feel like that? Or
that's exactly
try
right.
to start a conversation that way to get a little bit more about why they're feeling that way.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Because the reason it leads hope-based, because it'll lead to a place of strength. Like fictitiously, it would be, you're asking that question. Well, what is that? You're uncomfortable in your skin. What? That sounds terrible. What does that feel like?
Hmm.
Or asking questions of feeling. Type of thing, and then that person, shares what that feels like feeling. I don't feel confident. I don't feel strong. That type of thing, and then I might respond, well, gosh, there's our mutuality piece, but I'm mutually responsible in the relationship. Learning, I'm learning. The other person's learning. Maybe they'll learn from me. Maybe they'll learn. I'm not telling them anything. I'm just saying, hey, gosh, I so relate to that. I so relate to it. I don't necessarily feel unsafe, but I feel trapped. That's what I feel like. When I start feeling like I'm uncomfortable, I feel trapped, and I can't access that strength, and I can't access it. But then I remember. But then I kind of remember that, there are times that I'm strong and confident, and I can work on drumming up that confidence and that feeling, because I know I have been strong and confident in the past, so therefore I can be. So in this conversation, and then we continue on in the conversation, and in our peer support place, that's what we do. What we do with intentional peer support is we engage in those kinds of conversations, one-on-one, kicking them back with a cup of coffee. Sometimes it's formally, because somebody just, can I talk with somebody? Sometimes it's in a group. Sometimes it's when we're just having fun, or we're out at the park doing something, and the next thing you know is we're having a meaningful conversation like that. It's one of the things that it has been said that if you're operating, either of you correct me if I'm wrong, but if we're operating out of a fear-based mindset, then we're actually moving away from something. But if we're operating in a hope-based mindset or conversation, then we're actually moving towards something. Agreed?
I agree, and also hope-based conversations move you not only forward, but they rely on an evolving relationship with the individuals. It's not all about me. It starts with an all about me until you start getting it off your chest
Exactly.
and sharing, and then you realize that there's somebody that has struggled with the same struggles or similar struggles that you've had, and that evolves into conversation that will focus on getting well, on moving towards something, instead of reliving the past and living in the past. And it's very hard because it's a lot easier to go back to what has happened, because you know it so well, and you can kind of talk yourself into being comfortable with it, even though you're uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It's I think it's risky to take that step forward, but when you start engaging in hope-based conversations, you're heading towards wellness.
We like to use. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, okay.
We like to use something that we learned actually from you, David, at our center to help explain that part. And it's really all about your focus. If your focus is on what you're moving towards, then you're looking forward and you're looking at what you're moving towards. But if your focus is on what you're moving away from, then you turn like this, and it's a little harder to move forward if you're concentrating back here.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I love the whole moving towards something, because moving is that. It's just that there's movement. You're placing distance between yourself and something, and So yeah, moving toward, that's the ultimate goal, is to be moving toward whatever, and that can translate into all sorts of things based on the individual, right? And so we're getting close to running out of time here, so I don't want to get too wrapped up in too much more of that. But we'll obviously revisit these things a little bit more, because our 10 values and our tasks all are rooted in these same things. So there will be consistent language in the segments and programs coming after this. So in wrapping these things up, again, intentional peer support. Our main focus is about the relationship between two people. It's not just about one person. It's about both of us learning together. It's not about having an expert and somebody having the answers. It's not about helping, but it's more about learning. And our conversations, hopefully, prayerfully, are rooted in hope rather than in fear, and moving toward rather than moving away from, and focused on things that are very beneficial for our future. I do want to thank again Warren and Paula for joining me today and helping me get through this. But it has been fun, and I want to certainly thank Manchester Public Television for hosting this program. And there will be some contact information on the screen here in just a moment. But until next time, we most definitely want to invite you to our viewers to give us a call, check out our website. There's all sorts of resources there. Our calendar is there. Our groups, when our groups meet, the calendars for both Manchester and Derry are similar, but they are different. So I encourage you to check out both of those. We are on Facebook and Twitter type of thing, although the Twitter thing is on a slow coming. But just check us out, give us a call, come on by, most importantly. Even if it's just walk in the door, check us out, leave, get comfortable type of thing. But we would love to come alongside and build a relationship with you and learn together as we work towards wellness. All right, thank you.